father's cancer diagnosis. BBC presenter Gary Lineker reveals he had a hand in creating the broadcaster's new social media guidelines. And we'll find out why being stingy is back in vogue, thanks to Gen Z. Ugh. Joining me on the panel, never in vogue, Dr. David Ball and Esther Kraku, and the always fashionable Isabel Oakeshott and Penny Smith. But first, Prince Harry is making his way back to California after a whistle-stop transatlantic dash to see his father following the King's shock cancer diagnosis. The Duke of Sussex was seen beaming as he returned to London Heathrow this afternoon, just 24 hours after being driven from the same airport to Clarence House in a police escort. Harry had flown 5,000 miles for what turned out to be little more than 30 minutes with Charles before the King left for Sandringham to rest and recuperate. It's understood Harry spent the night in a luxury hotel rather than staying at a royal residence. The wayward Duke is not believed to have seen his brother William, despite royal sources claiming he would have gladly welcomed a reunion. The Prince of Wales is stepping up his royal duties during the King's absence, beginning by hosting an honours ceremony at Windsor Castle before attending a fundraising gala for the London Air Ambulance later this evening. Now, while Charles may be stepping back from the more physically arduous duties, business of state carries on. The King will continue to hold a weekly audience with the Prime Minister, but now it'll be remotely by phone from Norfolk. I don't think this would have been the right time for Harry to try and mend bridges with William. I really don't. William's wife is still recovering from quite serious surgery. If that was me, I would not want my sibling coming round to see me after everything that has been said in the press, after the documentaries. Now is not the time when I'm busy stepping in for my dad and trying to look after my kids and trying to look after my wife. Now is not the time to be coming round.
You see, I disagree. Sorry, I just completely disagree.
Oh, OK.
No, I totally disagree. Now is the time because, you know, the whole thing about the fact that King Charles is, is battling cancer means that actually, you know, you're suddenly reminded of how short life can be and how something can turn on a sixpence, how suddenly, you know, something can happen. Why not now? Now is the perfect time.
To do what? What exactly?
To pick up the phone and say, listen, Dad always said that he didn't want the last years of his life to be blighted by our vow.
I'm sorry.
No, I know he did all those things, but I'm just saying now is the time to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I threw everybody under a bus. But anyway, can we just try and mend fences?
That is convenient because he knew, with publishing Spare and speaking to Oprah and all of that, that there was a possibility that the status quo might calcify. There is a possibility that his family will completely shut him out forever and ever, particularly William, especially now that he's with Kate and helping with her recovery. He knew there was a possibility that there's no going back from this. So for him to say, I would have gladly had a meeting with William, well, actually, then it shows how naive he is if he didn't think that there was a possibility that William may never want to speak to him again. I think William is very protective of Kate, and he should also be protective of himself and his mental health. He still has 3 young children to take care of. If something happens, God forbid, to King Charles, he might have to become co-regent, or King Charles might have to abdicate. You don't know what's going to happen. The last thing he needs to deal with is Harry and the potential of Netflix cameras and leaks of his own and his Yoko Ono wife in California. I'm sorry, there are bigger things to deal with.
Can we just step back a bit? Because when your parent is diagnosed with cancer, your life falls apart. And I know because I've been there. So actually, this is a really important moment, I think, for them to come together as a family to say, let's bury the hatchet, because actually Dad's really sick and we need to get together. We need to, get past all of our grievances and deal with this as a family. So I think they could have just said hello. I think there are so many...
if they did.
Well, I think there are so many things going through my head about this. Obviously, I've been thinking about it over the last few days, just in terms of the King's diagnosis. Now, clearly, I said last week something wasn't quite right about the duration of stay. Now, we thought at that point it was just this benign prostatic hypertrophy, which is very common in men, as I said last week, but obviously something else was going on behind the scenes. Now, clearly, in terms of what has happened, and I don't want to speculate quite as to what he has, although I have a fairly good idea as to what he might have, it's obviously been caught early, we've been told that, but at the end of the day, you're still dealing with something you have no idea what you're dealing with. And everyone who has cancer and everyone I've treated says exactly the same. You have to take it step by step. And actually what you need is love and support of your family.
I think
the difficulty, and that's something you touched on, is the leaks and the lack of trust.
Yeah.
There is a complete, profound and very well-reasoned lack of trust on the part of all the royals towards Harry. How can they know that whatever kind of reconciliation, however tokenistic it was, even if it was just, as you say, a hello, let's pick up the phone, it's not within a matter of hours or days going to appear in some American publication as, you know, Harry's tearful reunion with William or whatever. And I understand why Prince William at this point is just not prepared to take that risk. Why none of them are?
If I was,
so much. And at the end of the day,
if I was him, I would, and there was a phone call. Surely you just tape it from now on.
Well,
Any conversation.
to protect yourself. But Harry and Meghan, we've heard are filming the next series of sort of the Harry and Meghan sort of docu-series or whatever. We don't know if he's actually being tailed by Netflix cameras because he doesn't have a choice. He does have a $100 million contract with Netflix. We don't know the nature of his relationship with any other sort of media outlet. I think it's very fair to say, actually, yes, we know that Dad has cancer and this is a difficult time, but there's so much responsibility on William's shoulders. He shouldn't have to deal with Harry trying to shoehorn his way back into the fold. If it's going to happen, it needs to be gradual, because it's not just about King Charles having cancer. It's about his 3 children. It's about his wife being, you know, out of action for the next 3 months. It's a lot bigger than just Harry trying to extend an olive branch. And I personally don't think there's any going back from there, but if it is, it has to be gradual.
But this is... Sorry, go on, Isabel.
Yeah, well, I was just, like David, I've got so many things going in my head about this, and one dimension is just how horribly wrong Prince Harry's decisions have all gone for him. I mean, he could never have predicted that there would be this succession of events whereby both his father and his sister-in-law should be really quite seriously unwell at a time when he has left the scene. So, you know, we've talked a lot about the repercussions of the drastic slimming down of the monarchy, but surely Harry could never have envisaged this.
I agree totally with that. And obviously we have fewer working royals, don't we, to take up those engagements. One of the other things that strikes me here is, and I'm really pleased for the King that he's been diagnosed successfully and he had all those investigations. But when you look at actually what's happened, where you've got 100,000 people with delayed cancer treatment because of the junior doctor strikes, when you've got 30,000 people who haven't had an MRI or a CT scan for over 3 months because of what's going on, you see the stark difference here between private medicine and the NHS.